call to order the regular town commission meeting of March 28th, 2023. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and remain standing for a moment of silence for the school shooting yesterday in Tennessee. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Mayor Tompeck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Here.
Commissioner Fender,
Here.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Here.
Thank you. We were supposed to have a presentation by Jordana Witter from Florida City Gas, but apparently she is not here and don't know why. So
Ran out of gas.
we'll skip past that one. Next proclamation is a problem gambling awareness proclamation. Town clerk, please read the proclamation.
Whereas the town of Sewalls Point has declared March 2023 as Problem Gambling Awareness Month to demonstrate its support in addressing problem gambling and the initiative of the Florida Council on Compulsive Gambling and bringing public awareness to the issues surrounding the problem. Problem gambling is a serious public health issue affecting 1 to 3% of the general adult population and often results in personal, financial, familial, legal, and other costs, including a high risk of suicide. Problem gambling is treatable for those who seek help, which minimizes the harm to Floridians and to the state as a whole. Whereas any individual, professional, or other organization dedicated to assisting those in need can participate in raising awareness and preventing problem gambling by promoting the statewide, confidential, toll-free, and 24-hour program helpline. The number is 888-ADMIT-IT. Now, therefore, I, John Tompeck, Mayor of the town of Sewalls Point, Florida, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2023 as Problem Gambling Awareness Month in the town of Sewalls Point.
Thank you very much. We will go ahead and mail that proclamation to the recipient. I don't have any public comments. Is there anybody from the public who would like to come up and be acknowledged and make a comment? Okay, that brings us down to additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda. Do you have any of those?
Move we approve the agenda as written.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield,
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck.
Yes. Okay, that brings us down to the consent agenda. Are there any questions, comments, or a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve as
Second.
provided.
Any questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield,
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman.
Yes.
Okay, we have no public hearings for ordinances, either first or second reading, which brings us to resolution number 956, Town Roadways Vertical Clearance. Would the town clerk please read the resolution title into the record?
A resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Sewalls Point, Florida, adopting the Florida Department of Transportation standards for vertical clearance of streets in the town of Sewalls Point.
Thank you very much. Mr. Daniels, you want to introduce the item?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. We've probably have heard, I know since I've been here since August, we've had 3 incidents involving tree situations, but there could be others that, address the vertical clearance. So doing the research, the standard is 16 feet unless you have special situations. And Mr. Capra, our town engineer, has volunteered, or not volunteered, but has agreed to write the documentation for the analysis that says that we're okay at 14 feet. Now, obviously, this issue came up because we have to do some trimming with the trees, and, we're also working on the canopy, on replanting some of the canopy to have the health of the canopy exist far beyond our years. So I think, all in all, I see this as a more positive measure than a negative measure because, this is the standards and we have to follow the law, which basically means the DOT can set the standards, so.
Thank you very much. Are there any public comments? Seeing none, Mr. Campo?
Fine, did I push my button? You might have just sensed that light bulb. I'm just wondering, what are the ramifications of this? I think it's an emergency vehicle concern, safety for our residents. So if people have trees that are not this minimum clearance, what's the ramifications of this resolution? I mean, I generally agree with it, but I just want to know.
I think education is the big part of it to start with, and, voluntary compliance of, the trees that are really a big effect. And checking with several arborists, sometimes, you have a branch that's long over a tree and hanging down. Sometimes if you do the trimming methods that they recommend and trim, maybe a couple feet off the end of it, the limb starts going back up, and that's really our goal, is to try to look at it. So it's not to sit here and just run down the street and just starting to cut limbs, but trying to work with everyone, number one, on the education piece, and then number two, on, trying to get voluntary compliance and working with individuals. And there is one gentleman that is volunteered as an arborist. He is an arborist, and he's more than happy to answer any questions that our residents might have.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Fender?
Yeah, I'm generally in agreements with this, but, I've got some experience with it just from my time here, and the box truck that ran into the low-hanging limb on Miramar, thank you. And that limb still exists today, thankfully, but in making it exist, we went through quite a few hoops, including bringing a fire truck down and driving it under that branch to prove that indeed the fire truck would clear it. To me, that's my minimal standard. I am concerned about what I see here as 16 feet versus 14 feet. I would hope that the spirit of our agreement would not be, well, the DOT says it has to be 16 or 17 feet, so we're trimming all our lower branches to that. I'm concerned about that line item in there, but I would like to keep the spirit of the agreement is, hey, we have to have emergency access to our facilities, and fire trucks need to get under those limbs. To me, that's 14 feet, and a 14-foot clearance does allow a fire truck through. So if this is an attempt or to put ordinances, paperwork and wording into the ordinances that allow us to trim up to 16 feet, then I'm not in favor of it. If it's truly to protect the 14-foot limit and make sure we have fire access, that's fine.
The intent is for the 14-foot limit.
Okay,
And
so
that's
then why
fine.
do we reference 16 feet?
Because that's the statute, and to get 14 feet, you need to show justification by specific analysis, and that's what our town engineer is providing for us, so we can have the 14 feet.
All right.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yeah, can it be made more clear that we would be abiding by the 14-foot? Because I agree, it's not completely, it just says with a provision. It doesn't necessarily say that we would use that provision or
I-
try to.
I think if the city attorney is, or town attorney, I'm sorry, Susan Garrett, who's filling in for Glenn tonight, if she doesn't have an objection, I definitely have no objection to adding the verbiage that we would be doing, setting it at 14 feet.
I don't see any problem with doing that. I will say that the actual enacting clauses, what comes after the now therefore be it resolved only mentions the 14
okay.
feet. It's only in the whereas clauses explaining the
Oh.
Yeah,
background
I thought section
that
3
it
was,
references the 16.
Good.
yeah,
So are the are the whereases just kind of to set the tone? They're not they're just kind of to, okay. So they don't hold as much weight is what you're telling me?
I like that.
Well, they explain the legislative intent, but, and this is a resolution, it's not an ordinance,
Right.
but it's basically something that comes below the now therefore is the
Okay.
real meat of the resolution.
I'll move approval of Resolution 956.
I'll second.
I just have one other question or comment. Commissioner Mayfield, you have another?
Yes, I was just going to clarify, I think the town manager already addressed this, but you were saying, obviously, all the trees over the side streets, those are owners' trees, so you're, like Commissioner Campo said, the whole goal is to try to get residents to buy into this and adopt measures of their own.
And
Okay.
and educate them on the proper way of trimming, so it'll keep the limbs from sagging down into the street.
Okay.
Commissioner Fender?
I'll just add one more comment, because I spoke pretty strongly about 14 feet. I'm not opposed to making sure that when we're pruning our young trees and they're growing, that we keep them in the 16-foot height limit so that, they grow to that height and we don't just allow trees to all grow at 14 feet. We just want to protect the ones that are strong limbs, so.
The only other question or comment I was going to make, I had a feeling that somehow this was associated a little bit with the Phase 3 project, because they are raising the road there, and I know that Joe had talked about some additional tree cutting that'd be required to at least give us that 14-foot clearance. So is that my recollection correct? Or?
Your recollection is correct, and I thought I had supplied that to each of you. If I haven't, I will send it. I know I usually bring it to the meetings with me in case somebody has a question, but I will make sure I send that off tomorrow for you. They already have an arborist that has gone through and laid out the plan on what needs to be trimmed and what needs. I did? Okay.
Okay,
But I can resend it.
that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, no other comments? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Mayor Tom Peck?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
Commissioner Fender?
Aye.
Okay, we have no old business, no new business, but we do have a discussion item on the tree ordinance discussion. Commissioner Fender is going to introduce this item.
Is he?
He is.
Okay, good. I'm now getting my first glimpse at the typed-up version of the modified ordinance, and I spent some time with town manager, and I'm thankful for his time and diligence in taking down the notes that were sent around in handwritten form, but it looks like they've been typed up now. I don't know what the goal of the agenda item is, but what I would hope that it is that we take one more 2-week period to give the residents who have concerns about it a chance to weigh in, and also cross-reference it with a pretty significant list of recommendations from one of the residents who had some great ideas. But what I noticed in here, and by the way, I walk my dog past the new building on Oakwood Drive every day, and it's amazing to me that meets percolation clearance. I mean, that is almost a zero lot line structure on our road now. I mean, I don't know where water goes when it lands on that facility, but it's certainly coming down the road and not going into the ground. But I would say one addition to this would impact ordinances is what our setback is. I don't know when it changed from 25 to 15. It wasn't recently. But if that is meeting a 15-foot setback, it is tight, and I would say take it to 25. But I'm happy with the addition of the mitigation requirements that I haven't had a chance to review it all, but the ones that I went through and made notes to, I appreciate that. And you're welcome to, if there are changes made, you're welcome to correct me, Bob.
I think there was some feedback from our police chief, just looking at, the enforcement issues and just some other issues that we had. I think I like your suggestion of, giving it out there for 2 weeks. I think that we can put this version of it in the agenda packet for the next meeting and giving everybody an opportunity to take a look at it. I would like to have another once-over through it too, because, there's a lot of stuff that kind of came through the office the last 2 months, and I just, I would like to go through and make sure that all our i's are dotted and our t's are crossed.
Frank, I was wondering if you could maybe go over some of the details here. When I looked through this, I didn't see what I thought were going to be any kind of major changes other than, the mitigation plan being part of the permit application, which we were doing it even though it wasn't written into the ordinance.
Sure. Well, the significant input that I had when I sat down with the town manager was the fact that it was recognized that mitigation wasn't even really a definition in our ordinance. So you're right, and correctly, that adding that mitigation process and requiring a mitigation plan to be submitted with the tree removal permit is the significant change to my input into it. But that's why I requested another 2 weeks to cross-reference it with the several ideas that some of the residents had, including perhaps incentive, which I don't believe is in here yet.
No, we don't have the incentive in there yet. That's why I'd like to cross-reference it. That'll give me some opportunity. If I can, Mr. Mayor, if we can turn to page 3, there is something I want to bring out to your attention. That first comment about every 3 years. We have in the ordinance the removal of not more than 25% of the canopy of a tree, but we don't say how often you can do it. So, again, this is Jordana.
Hi.
So we can, if you want to change that time frame, I just put 3 years in there because we need something in there. Otherwise, somebody can, for 4 weeks later, come and do 25% more of a tree, because we're not really restricting them. So we need something in there. Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, can I comment on that item?
Sure.
Yeah, I saw that too, and I think that seems long. We have a big tree that we trim. I would think we'd start with a year, once a year, because we kind of do it before hurricane season. Every 3 years, it'll grow a lot, I think, at 3 years.
Yes, into the power lines, most of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Commissioner Fender.
So just other one point, as I'm looking at this document for the first time, I am noticing that the changes in line aren't really made. The comments are made on the side, specifically the first mitigation definition. Mitigation definition is still not in the list of definitions,
Yep.
but it is commented in blue on the side, which I assume means we'll get another version of this that perhaps the attorney has walked through, suggesting the updates to the ordinance. This seems to be just comments on the existing ordinance right now. Am I interpreting that correctly or incorrectly?
That's correct, and the one that came out in the packet does have the mitigation definition in there. But it's, again, it's not this version with the change, so I want to make sure that you all have the right information, so that's why I like your idea of the 2 weeks.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, let's take the time and do it right, and make sure, we don't need to rush it through, just make sure it has the correct information in it.
Vice Mayor Kurzman.
Yes, one of the things I was going to mention, we have an oak tree. We have about 60 trees on the property right now, total. And one of the oak trees we have has like vines, and we couldn't get rid of it. We do it manually, and they just come right back. So we had to literally take almost every leaf and small branch off of the tree to get rid of these vines. Otherwise, it could wind up killing a good portion of the tree. And sometimes you'll have to remove part of the canopy to do this. And there might be some exceptions for the health of the tree, which was a situation like this. It'll come back, but sometimes you have to be a little excessive. We wouldn't cut down the tree in any other circumstance, but we're not going to cut it down. But we did it in order to save the tree, not to harm the tree in any way. So there should be something in there about the health of a tree if you're to do this too.
But wouldn't the permit have a comment or something from the arborist saying you need to do that?
It didn't get cut down, it's just to do, I guess I could have gotten it, yeah, that wouldn't be a problem.
Commissioner Campo?
This is the first that I've seen this, so I think the clock has just started ticking. I got a handwritten, looked like a cocktail napkin that was spilled on and put in the bottom of a bird cage.
That's when the best
And then
work
with
is
a
done,
kid's
man.
crayon on top of it. So I was just like, what is this? So this is the first that I just said I'm not even going to attempt to look at that, so I don't. I think what's really important is, and has been mentioned before, is there's state laws regarding municipalities' approach to tree trimming, and I'd like Susan to talk to us about that. I don't know if you have that off the top of your head, but I think that in what Glenn said before is that our current code is very robust in regards to protecting trees, and that we're pressing up upon current law already as far as what the municipality can do. And, you know, I hate poking bears because, you know, that brings about a lot of unintended consequences. And if our current code is already, you know, pushing some limitations of the state law to bring out like this whole, you know, tree topping and fantailing and hat racking, we're bringing in a whole new realm here. I thought this was new construction that we were, you know, really focusing on. But this is, Dave just said it. I mean, this is your everyday tree trimming, your annual trimming of hurricanes. If people are going to end up having to come into town hall for an annual permit to do their normal, what everyone does to get their houses ready for hurricane season, I think it's an expansion. And I think that we've got to be careful to, and let me back up a second. I understand, and I've never articulated this, I understand and I still feel the trauma that you felt and realized through what happened on your street. And I've never acknowledged that. I could only imagine, you know, it's like, you know, it's, you know, you're almost losing a friend because you look next door and the whole lot is just looking differently. So I understand that you've been through a lot through this whole thing, and it's great that we were able to harness some of that energy into taking some action that, you know, might prevent some things from happening in the future. Some of the maintenance issues on the proposal, I think, go in a whole nother direction. I mean, if you want to know why we lost Bob Kellogg as a town manager, it was because of hat racking of a tree just to the west of us here. That was why we lost a town manager, and that was from the resident that filed the complaint, the owner of the property, and Bob Kellogg, and the person on the commission that made the motion that he be removed. I mean, it's a very flammable issue. It has a lot of subjectivity. And what I find, and I've lived here a long time, and I could tell you my sad stories, and everyone's got one, but there's selective enforcement when that only gets enforced, because, you know, was it, you know, the chief's going to take out a protractor and figure out 25% every 1 year or every 3 years? I mean, how are you going to enforce that? But here's how it gets enforced. The neighbor who you didn't invite to the Christmas party 6 years ago, she still remembers that, right? And she's going to watch with her protractor and see if you're trimming your tree 24% or 25%. And that's the kind of stuff that just really deters the Mayberry effect that we have. Before Kathy Muskoski was my next door neighbor, my next door neighbor made my life and my family's life living hell because my kids wanted to play in the pool on a Saturday or a Sunday. I mean, it was really that bad, and you could talk to the chief about it. It was bad. So what I don't want to do is allow a lot of subjectivity for enforcement where neighbors just weaponize things like this, because I genuinely believe that you have a good motive in trying to prevent something from happening that happened across the street from you, and that's what I'm trying to look at. And you had said at the time it was a failure of the process. I don't see anything much on the failure of the process here. I see an expansion of the amount of permits that are needed. And my last thing, and I know I like to say it all at one time rather than asking 8 questions, that I'll say to this commission is that we are on the brink of some of the best environmental improvement this county has seen. And we have got a great example that what we can show and display with the STAs, the road, the septic to sewer, okay? And I think we've got a pretty good consensus. It kind of came together last meeting. We had, some on one side, some on the other side. This is going to create long-term great environmental improvements and something that I think can be seen as, an example. And we should be able to do that, because we have the means to set good examples. I just don't want to poke the bear because we've got so many people doing so many good things, and we are going to rip this town apart with roads and pipes and septics and sewer. I mean, this is going to be the biggest. I mean, this is a $20 million. I don't know that we've ever done anything like $5 million, okay? You're going to have people pulling off Sewalls Point Road at Miramar, going and rerouting through South River Road, where all those landscape trucks are. It's going to cause a lot of disruption. And to me, to disrupt people's lives more with, clearing out their trees for hurricane season every 3 years or 1 year, to me, I just don't want to push our luck, because we're going to be disturbing a lot of people. We're asking for a lot of people's patience financially, logistically, and I just don't want to nip at agitating people who are saying, wait a second, they're doing things that, we don't want them to do, Big Brother and, all these types of things. So I've covered a lot of areas there, but I think first and foremost, if Susan, if you're familiar with it, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I know that we've been sent it before.
It's right here.
Can you, okay, there we go. You want to do you see it on your screen, Susan?
Yes.
Okay, is that
that's-
familiar with you?
This is there's the provision that I'm aware of that is a fairly recent law that basically says that the town can't do anything to regulate the removal of a tree for which the property owner has a certification from an arborist that it is diseased or poses a risk to persons or property. So it means it's not just that you have to issue a permit, you can't require a permit. You can't impose restrictions on that as long as they can pull out the letter. It's not clear, the law is not clear as to exactly what the standard is for that determination. I mean, there's a standard written into the law, but how that's interpreted, there's a lot that the state has left open to question. I don't think it's known even if the town has the ability to question the validity of the information that the property owner provides. So it's a pretty strong statute in that regard, but it only deals with trees that are, for which a properly qualified arborist has provided proof that it is diseased or unsound.
So that's, are you saying it's removal only and not trimming?
No, I think it applies to pruning, trimming, or removal.
Right.
And that has been incorporated. I'm just seeing this red line of the ordinance for the
I
first
scratched
time,
it,
but that has been incorporated or has been noted in the red line copy that you have.
Okay, well,
section
you know,
7023.
I'll just, and this is a process, we're going to continue to look at it. That's something that I think we need to have legal, because I don't want one person having an issue with it and then challenging the whole thing, and now you got, you know, if they're going to go through legal, and sometimes when you have a court opinion, it just swipes this big path, and that's, they're not surgical. So I just want us to keep, if you could maybe send that to us again, would that be tomorrow or whatever? Just so that we can keep our eye on that as well, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, thank you very much for letting me elaborate.
Vice Mayor Kurzman.
Yeah, one of the things I paid close attention to, all the tree stuff that's happened, it's usually new residents and newer residents that are responsible for the tree cutting in the first place. The people that have been established, they love their trees, they're keeping the trees, they trim their trees like they're supposed to. Nothing dramatic has happened. It happened right along here, the river, they cleared the lot. They had, we have one in the archipelago, the ones over by Mandalay. You had the one by Periwinkle, you had, I could go on, but it's all new people that just bought their homes in the lot on Oakwood. I think we need a better way of educating the new residents that come in, and I think that would help tremendously. And that's really, it would be a new residents, somebody to come over, greet them, and explain, we really care about the trees, and tree preservation is very important to the town. And, if there's anything you want to do with the trees, please come in and talk. Our town manager has an open door. He's always welcome to, to talk to him about this. And anything we could do to help you with the trees or any of your needs or questions, please come by. And that would make a big difference, I think. It's going back to education. That's really what we got to focus on.
Commissioner Fender.
Okay, so, thanks for all those comments. This is going to be a wide-ranging and target-rich response, and I hope I don't miss any. But we'll start at the top. Commissioner Campo, you started your discussion basically on the premise that this was about impacting people who wanted to trim. And I'll just start off by saying that is not at all what this discussion's about, and I wouldn't expect anyone to have issues trimming within reason. I assume we all trim our trees, and I don't believe that I haven't commented or made any impact or any changes to any ordinance or suggested any change to ordinance that had in relation to any kind of trimming, especially annual trimming in preparation for hurricanes. We absolutely have to do all of those. The only thing that any changes we're talking about right now impact is the removal of trees, which is what happened on Oakwood, and even we'll touch a little bit more on it, but the state statute related to that suggests that some arborists must be involved in that process. That's good. I would expect that an arborist would submit 40 different tree studies for each of the 40 trees that got cleared on that lot, so we could know that every single one of them is diseased to the extent that they have to be removed. Clearly, that didn't happen. But they did. There was an arborist, and he spoke up, and they got around the process. But that's okay. The process we're on now is to make it a little bit more difficult and make it a little clearer what the process is for them to remove the trees that, by the way, some trees have to be removed, and this is not an issue about that. This is an issue of mindful development, right? If you're going to clear cut a lot, let's do it mindfully and consider the impact of that removal, and what's missing is the mitigation discussion. If we are going to impact, which sometimes we have to do, what is the mitigation process of that impact? And so the mitigation is what I added in here, and I'll point you at section 70-85, which is permit application procedures for single-family lots. Page number 9 of 16. The wording isn't in here, but the blue comment to the right is the process of submitting a permit for tree removal, assuming it adheres to all of the statute stuff we talked about, and I'll address again in a moment, would also come with a permit that included the mitigation plan involved. And what a mitigation looks like. That is not part of our process now. You can submit a permit to remove all the trees on the lot, and, later on, we're going to tell you what we're going to do to mitigate that. That, to me, is a broken process. We need to know what the mitigation plan is before we approve your permit to remove all those trees. And we can all agree, we can all discuss what proper mitigation is. I don't care about that. I'm suggesting that the ordinance is broken, and no developer has to actually say what they're doing to our community when they clear cut a lot. That's the thing we're trying to fix. It's not about trimming or the hurricane stuff, and all those are important things, but I'm addressing what I consider to be the broken process of the permitting aspect. And so that's point one. Second point, to your concept about the ordinance that is on the screen now, and what has been somehow lobbied and pushed forward from the state is an important law. We should adhere to it. But there's also the concept of home rule. And I would expect in a town like Sewalls Point that our ordinances might be a little more stringent than the higher level ordinances that might be pushed down from the state. Doesn't mean that someone can't say, you know what, I still want to clear cut this lot, and by God, the state says I'm allowed to. Well, okay, all right, so I believe that's going to be a one-off, if ever. I think most people that live here do care about the community, and if our ordinances stipulate that, and you get a beautiful welcoming packet like you just showed me that says, hey, we care about our trees, we want to protect them, and if you're planning to move here, expect that, and we're talking about trees, but there's probably a million different examples, marijuana distributors and whatever that you want to not diminish, fast food restaurants, whatever you want to not diminish your community value or aesthetic, you might follow the letter of the law. Oh, okay, so you do want to clear this lot. I see that the state, in fact, tells you you may, even though my ordinances say you should not. I would like to see a tree study for every single one of these trees that you're about to impact. And you can slow this process way down, or you can come back to us with a plan that's reasonable, that shows us that you are mindfully developing in our community to live to the aesthetic that we would like our community to be. And I believe most developers will adhere to that. I didn't get the sense that, that wasn't the case here, but I don't think we pushed back hard enough in this particular case. And I think because our process was broken. So I don't know if I'm explaining that clearly enough, but I think the people that live around me care about mindful development, and they and certainly my next door neighbor is livid. He wants to plant a forest in his front yard right now because of what they did to his across the street area. But that said, I think the home rule concept is important, but I also noticed, and you just requested that we send this document around again. I noticed when this first came up, the town manager diligently sent us all this beautiful legalese to tell us how we can't stop somebody from cutting trees on our property. I don't believe that's the spirit of what we're trying to do here. And indeed, when I got this handwritten copy of there, I noticed that the actual wording from the state statute that allows us to cut down every tree on our peninsula was dutifully included in the actual wording of our Sewalls Point ordinance. So I dutifully took your paper napkin version and crossed it out and said, no. If somebody wants to go find that ordinance somewhere else, they should go find it. But I don't believe that we really need to parrot back the state level ordinance. I think we have our own ordinances, and they say clearly what we want you to do. And there are a subset of other ordinances that are up in the sky. If you want to try these judiciously, feel free. You are within your right, but I'm not going to hand it to them on a silver platter and say, oh, by the way, the state says you're allowed to do this. That's not really the spirit of the ordinance that I intend to vote yea or nay on, right? The ordinances are there, they're laws, they should be followed. But we also, within our community, have the right to specify perhaps a stronger state of aesthetic for how we want you to treat the trees and the community and the canopy. So I think I've said enough. I don't know what I missed, but it's about tree removal, not tree trimming, if that helps.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yeah, sorry, I had things I was going to say, and then I got sidetracked thinking about the whole mitigation. The ordinance is confusing when you're reading it and trying to fully grasp all of this. A lot of it gets confusing. Let me say what I was going to say first. overall, we have actions that we can take to change the ordinance, broaden it, restrict it, whatever. And then we have other actions that don't affect actually changing the ordinance. I have heard before from in the past that we have a good tree ordinance. This is what people tell me. I look at it, it's complicated. There seem to be a lot of rules. It seems pretty good the way it is. That being said, I'm sure there's always cleanup to do. The whole mitigation plan being sent with the approval makes sense. I mean, I'm not against making some changes. I don't think there needs to be any radical changes to it. And so to Commissioner Campo's point, I don't know if you rustle up problems if you mess with your ordinance. I think it's important to focus on the non-ordinance aspects of this. And I think there are some real positive things we could do. In that list before from one of the residents, and the whole recognition of, I know we call them heritage trees. I don't really know the exact definition of heritage, but like known trees. Like, I feel like we could get started on that. I feel like we all agree on that. But like, I would be proud if somebody recognized my tree. We have a beautiful tree in our yard. People know the tree, and you kind of get a feeling of pride. And so I don't know if that requires a committee or if the staff can do it, but kind of get these things rolling to get people excited about trees, I think is one area that we could start going on. And then, and like Commissioner or Vice Mayor was talking about the whole arrival of new residents, that's a whole area that's non-ordinance related that we could, get going on. And then, I'm not saying I'm against changing the ordinance. I'm all for protecting the trees. I just don't want to make something too big or clutter it too much. And then I had gotten sidetracked thinking about the mitigation. And I would appreciate a reminder from maybe our building official or the town manager, exactly how the mitigation works. It's required for, I was reading one thing that says, if you have any, at the end, there's a paragraph about mitigation on page, I think it's the last page, hold on. 15. And it says mitigation, so it sounds very important because it's the only thing that seems to talk about mitigation, not in a other paragraph. It says, in addition to or in lieu of civil penalties, the town may require a replacement, blah, 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 blah. So obviously that's only if you've already broken the code, haven't gotten a permit or whatever, then you may be able to, then you can mitigate it. What are the other, we keep using terms about mitigation when you apply for a permit. What is that mitigation going to show? Because if you're applying for a permit, you haven't exactly broken any penalties yet. Does this just show how you're going to keep up with whatever the required trees are on the lot? Because I know it says, like, if you have a house on there, you're supposed to have 8 trees, or if it's a certain size, and 12 trees if it's a bigger size. So what is the mitigation going to look like for someone who's coming to get a permit to build a new house, but all their permits, what is that going to look like? Help me explain the mitigation from when that one makes sense. If you've broken the code and they're like, okay, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to plant some other trees. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Versus the mitigation when someone goes to get a permit.
Right.
What do we envision that looking like?
It's inch for inch, but palms are rated differently.
Where is that in the,
It's not.
It is. It
I looked. I don't see mitigation specified anywhere.
Well, maybe you can tell us, what is the process when someone pulls a
Yeah.
building permit, and what are they required to provide, like a tree survey, inventory, and then how do you respond when you are going through the process of issuing a permit? Because I built a house in Castle Hill, and I spent more money on the landscape architect than the real architect. So we had every hardwood tree, planted and plotted, and so I remember saying, if you're going to cut this down, we actually built that house around the tree. We dug a ditch. We treated the roots. I mean, the arborist was treating the roots with like a massage oil or something. I'm like, what on earth am I doing here? And it's it's okay, girl. He was referring to the tree. Okay, it's okay, girl. So I know what I had to go through when we had to do a building permit. We had to show the building official, inch for inch. If you knock down this, you had to do this. So tell us about the permit process. Because
Okay, if I could just clear up the one issue, and then I'll get back to yours first with mitigation. In the ordinance, it's 70-155 mitigation. In addition or in lieu of civil penalties as provided by this chapter, the town may require replacement of illegally removed trees or other protected vegetation on a double inch-for-inch basis, accumulation of the tree diameters, doubling the diameter of the trees removed. A combination of monetary fines and the trees replants may be required. So
That
we.
makes sense to me.
Right, so, and palms don't count as the
I
same,
think they're a third.
a third of the,
Right.
so if you chop down 3 palms, that
Right.
would equal 1 tree.
Right.
So that's how we look at it. And it's, getting back to your question as far as what we require, we're requiring a survey of the trees on the, when they submit. We've been doing this for some time now. And any tree that they're going to be removed, they either have to submit a mitigation plan or relocation of those trees. Recently, we've just rejected somebody that wanted to move a tree because of their driveway. They wanted to line up a driveway because of this tree. The answer is no. They don't like that answer, but that's the way it is. We're standing firm on that. Others have just gone ahead and cut down a tree, and they went ahead and mitigated it with a whole bunch of other trees that they're replanting in another location. And these are things that some of the residents don't see. They say, well, they removed these trees in the front here. Yeah, but they planted 10 other ones in the back. So we are getting a canopy out of it. It just doesn't look like we're doing anything, but we are. And we do require, once they submit the plan and they show the trees that remain, the trees that removed, and then they have to add up the inches of the ones removed for the total amount of inches to be mitigated. And that is either with a monetary, but we don't really collect the monetary, we'd rather have the trees. So a lot of the times they agree with that too, and they'll put the canopy back inch for inch for those trees.
This is before you issue the permit.
Correct, and
Right.
there's other times too where we just had one now, came back for a revision, and I just kicked it back today.
Right.
Once they, because a lot of times they don't know where the driveway's going, it seems like they don't, that's the last thing on their mind once they get the house. So they come in with phase 2 of a tree mitigation plan. And this one got kicked back again because they didn't overlay the driveway on the property, so I couldn't see when they were saying, we want to remove all these trees. Why? Well, the driveway's going there. I don't see a driveway. Show me the driveway, and then this way I'll make the decision. We don't just say, yeah, go ahead. We have to see, and if the driveway can be moved, we'll then suggest, well, you need to move the driveway over a little bit, and then you won't have to remove that tree. Or what kind of tree is it? Is it non-native? Well, then sure,
Yeah. So can I ask one other question?
Go ahead.
When you do the arithmetic of the, was it 2 for 1? Double inch for inch? Do you ask if the trees that they're planting are to their neighbor's benefit, or is 2 for 1, 2 for 1? I mean, the fact that this situation is they're putting the new trees in the backyard is something that probably is not visible right now until this home is probably going to be completed, right? But you're doing the arithmetic, and you're figuring out that they're going to plant trees. So neighbors who might be used to seeing nice, big, lush trees in the front yard might not see that anymore, but that's not part of your arithmetic, correct?
correct, we don't
Okay.
choose the location. And a lot of times the location is also dictated by the driveway in the front yard and the drain field in the front yard and the water retention. So that limits the actual footprint that they're able to actually place these trees. So that's why that's more than likely going into the back or along the sides. Thank you very much. You're
Can
welcome.
Commissioner Fender, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask about what he was talking about. So I think sometimes the term mitigation was confusing me, because when I look at these requirements that I think that you're referring to, it's kind of section 70-41 on page 5, and for existing homes, section 70-21 on page 4. Are those the ordinances that are causing you to do the actions you just spoke about, the quote mitigating of a new house being built? Let's look at page 5.
On page 5, you're talking
I'm
about
sorry, no,
them
I'm
tree
sorry.
requirements?
Hold on, sorry. Nope, I just had it. Okay, yes, 70-41. Is that kind of what you're talking about when you're talking about, this is the ordinance that is addressing the rules you were just enforcing.
Correct, because, well, part of
that-
it is because we try not to get down to this because we don't want them to just have the bare minimum.
Right, okay. So I think what, this is helping me, I'm just thinking this through. The whole mitigation, I was kind of getting confused with people that were breaking code and having to mitigate their problems essentially versus you trying to keep the trees and mitigate the removal of them.
No, right. We're-
Okay, so
we-
there's no definition of mitigation for, in our ordinances for the day-to-day
Yeah.
permit process? Right? Isn't that, you were asking about the permit process
Yeah,
and,
there's, mitigation can be done before, during, or after.
right,
Right.
If
Okay.
I can clarify just that issue, and I apologize, Commissioner Fender, but we did, after the problems that we ran into on Oakwood, we did move that as part of our administrative rules to the front. So when there is a building permit coming in, and then they also need to have a tree permit with that, along with their mitigation plan. So, in the future, we will have those that, it's a public record. So, when we have neighbors that contact us, we can show them, well, yes, but this is what we're holding them to, and we didn't have that on Oakwood.
right.
Another one that everybody's noticed is in the north section, they went ahead and almost cut down every tree on their property. The house has been under construction for some time. Right now, that part of it's on hold. They're coming up with a mitigation plan, and it's been rejected already. Because we don't want just, the bare
Right.
minimum, because right now you have 0.
Okay.
Or you have two left of all the ones. And so, that's one of the ones that they wanted to remove the last 2 also because of a driveway. And absolutely not. You already removed everything else. No.
Okay. Okay, well, no, this is clarified.
And these
for me.
happen on the
That's
weekends
what I know.
sometimes too, so it just, hey,
Right.
I come in and there's stumps. I'm like, what happened here? So, they weren't given, they just figure, well, if I'm not there, they'll go ahead and do it and then ask for forgiveness later. And we've run into that.
Okay,
unfortunately.
and so you had said right now, or let's say 2 months ago, it could have happened before, during, or after, but now we've changed procedures that all the mitigation is happening before, correct?
We're a lot more strict on that, correct?
Okay.
Commissioner Fender?
Jack, I'm super appreciative of you being the pointy end of the spear on this. I know it's difficult sometimes to have to be the bearer of the ordinance, but the ordinance should back you up.
It just, yeah.
But I appreciate that, the role that you have to play there. It's not always very positive. I did want to comment on the mitigation discussion because to me, the mitigation rules are clear, and so let's define them. Really, you can't do mitigation before, during, or after if the ordinance doesn't say you have to. And then what happened on Oakwood is they followed the rules. They didn't have to provide a mitigation plan when they put in their plan for how they wanted to clear cut the lot. They were going to build a house on this space, and those trees were going to go. What should have happened and what should be articulated in section, whatever section I told James about a minute ago, the mitigation, the permit submission case, is that when you submit your permit, you should tell us what you intend to do about these 40 oak trees or the specific trees on the lot, and mitigation would be defined as, okay, I see you're going to cut down 20 trees, and you're only required to have 8 trees on your property according to the ordinance. The town of Sewalls Point is about to lose, do the math, 15 trees on our peninsula. A mitigation would be, okay, in lieu of, and FPL does this all the time, by the way, in lieu of the impact on this particular lot, we agree to build a playground over here to offset the community negatively, or to plant twice, we'd like to plant twice as many trees on, in this area that would help maintain the canopy for the birds on Bird Island to be able to come and roost and get their sticks and take back to Bird Island. The mitigation is part of mitigating the impact they are about to have on the property. It's not after the fact, oh, they did something wrong, so now they've been penalized and we're mitigating by giving them a fine. That, it should be part of the plan. They should be doing mindful development that says, hey, we'd like to build a house here. We understand we're gonna have to cut down 20 trees. That's not a good thing, but in lieu of that, we'd like to mitigate that by planting twice as many trees that the ordinance requires in the backyard, which I'm fine with what you described as, hey, we're putting 10 in the backyard. Great, the canopy's protected, right? But they don't, the mitigation doesn't have to be on the property. The mitigation could be anywhere on the peninsula, right? The question is what is offsetting the negative ecological impact of what that builder is about to do on that particular lot? Does that, I mean, I don't know if I'm clarifying, but it should be, and you are eloquently articulated the existing mitigation, which is in addition to lieu of civil penalties, town may, capital may, require replacement of illegally removed trees. But that's not the spirit of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to say, when you submit your permit, you've thought about the mitigation you're about to do, and do you agree, Mr. Building Official, that this is an adequate level of mitigation? And you may say, wow, that's great that you're doing all this. Or you may say, I see you're cutting down 15 trees, but you're only planting 3 more. I don't really feel like that's quite the mitigation we would like in the town of Sewalls Point. I mean, you get my sense, right?
Yes,
Yeah, so-
absolutely.
And I'm saying it's not really for you, but for the benefit of my fellow commissioners who I hope understand the spirit of what we're trying to do is protect the peninsula, not make it difficult for builders to build. And then James brought up a minute ago that there's not that many lots left. This should only impact clear-cutting lots. No, this.
But when it's the one across the street from you, I could see how it makes an
No,
impact.
but-
I get that. No, I mean, it was, you
It
know.
drives it home when it's across the street from you, but, I mean, James brought it up,
That's the other James.
yeah, I'm sorry, Commissioner Kurzman brought it up a year ago or so when somebody clear-cutted a lot on away from our street, and I think you just mentioned one a second ago that I'm not familiar with, but I think our job is to protect the aesthetic and the canopy of the peninsula. And I think our ordinances should reflect that. Whether or not somebody really wants to take us to court and supersede them, okay, you might win. You know, that's fine. Feel free to do that if you want to, but it seems a lot easier just to follow what seems to be a rational process and do mindful development, you know. Enough said.
Commissioner Campo?
So I want to just confirm and agree with Commissioner Mayfield that there's non-ordinance methods to strengthen our commitment to trees. I'm all about that because I'm not into heavy-handed government rules and regulations and people climbing your trees to measure things because, you know, again, there's strife. And so, you know, I think kind of echoing those things, we've got education, which is the booklet. And I'd like to say, you know, if there's some way for us to be notified of new residents, you know, that we should send the booklet, you know, by mail to each new resident, you know, so that we're education. Now, we're going to be doing some work with communications people, and, you know, they have other ways to educate. But there's nothing like, you know, the realtors should have books that they hand out to new residents, you know, before they move in. You know, just like a VRBO, the first thing you look at is, you know, what's your Wi-Fi code and, you know, how do you figure out the remote control. So I love education, and we need to figure out how to do that. Recognition is great. I'll recognize your tree. That's great. Now, we spoke about something else, and Mariah's, you know, researching that, but we had a mitigation fund. Someone paid heavy fines, and we set aside some money, which, you know, we're having trouble finding out exactly where on the balance sheet it is. But I remember when Michelle Berger was like, hey, we find them, we set aside the money. I think another step in that direction is, and I think that would be great for community involvement, like we've got I think we've got $50,000 in that fee, I think, in that fund, once we, you know, figure it out. And along A1A, we have those trees dying. Michelle planted 2 oaks. They're just sitting there. They're like Charlie Brown's Christmas tree, you know. But why don't we figure out, you know, how to plant those plants? Or someone had said they purchased some trees, you know, and to train, you know, to hand out those trees and say, look, this is where to plant them. Don't plant them under the electrical wire. Was a good place, good tree, or some program like that. So I would hope that we could.
Right tree.
Right place, right tree, yeah. I would hope that we could, you know, make a more comprehensive view to this
It's on the website right now.
with the education, recognition, mitigation. Now, lastly, I will just say that the things that I was referring to before as far as expanding this proposal from Commissioner Fender is page 6, 70-43, you're expanding the maintenance of vegetation to include hat racking, topping, or lion's tail pruning. So we are expanding it to maintenance, because that's why those definitions are added in there. And so that means that, one person's hat racking is another person's, joint pruning, but we're requiring now more people to get maintenance permits. And, maybe you don't like white cars, maybe you don't like black cars, maybe you like to wrap your car in like neon green with advertising.
trucks.
But maybe I like hat racking, maybe I like pruning it at the joint, Who's to say, how a person should maintain those trees? Arborists will say that if you prune a tree a certain way, the wind will travel through it and be less susceptible to getting knocked down. So are we going to now start telling them now, if you're going to trim a tree in a certain way, that requires a permit? So I don't understand that whole addition of,
I didn't add it, I don't know.
okay, so where did that come from? If you didn't add it, because I thought this was your document.
No.
Oh, okay.
My comments are in blue.
I have a feeling I know, but none of us? Okay, so I have a feeling it was probably the same person that was really involved with, the tree on the,
I actually think it was Chief.
I'd be happy to explain it,
Yeah.
in all seriousness. You may not realize our current ordinance already prohibits hat racking of trees, but who can define it? That's why it was added. We went through and looked at things that we already had prohibitions on, and actually told you what it was, so you know you shouldn't do it.
so where is that in the ordinance, that it's
Everybody knows hat racking is
outlawed?
generally considered bad. I mean,
Yeah, it exists.
Oh, I know it
Hat
exists.
racking is prohibited
I mean,
under our
there's someone
ordinance.
that lives on my street.
As you can recall,
that-
someone
they
lost
like-
their job over hat racking, but it wasn't defined.
Exactly.
So that's why we wanted to define it.
Where is, that's a good question. Where is it written that if you do that?
It's a
I don't
definition.
expect you to. No, I know it's a definition, but it's referenced.
Yeah, well, the definition we actually took out of either Coral Gables or Indian, which is one of the ones you referenced as an interest in, or
Right.
Glenn may have mentioned them, as well as Indian River Shores.
Where is the
Prohibition.
line where you need to have hat racking defined?
Someplace in all of these pages, I'm gonna be honest, having looked through a half dozen ordinances, but
It's a
I
big
can assure
font.
you.
43.
Okay,
743,
it is there.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
7043.
So it
It's
just
on the
didn't,
screen.
it just didn't define
you.
it. So in the interest of fairness to people, it'd be like saying you can't speed, but not telling you what the speed limit
Yeah.
is. The same thing even with the pruning, you may not realize your ordinance already says you can't trim a tree more than 25% of the canopy. But we also didn't define what the canopy was. And then the next question, that I heard asked earlier was, okay, so today you cut off 20%. Next week, can you cut off 20% more? And the week after that, 20% more? And by the end of next month, the tree's gone.
That was a good change.
Because we have had someone recently that did do that. There's an olive trunk up off of North Sewalls Point Road. There's no leaves. So I can assure you that any of the comments that I made here were not to make it more onerous. It was to, these are issues that have come up that, we'll look at the trees that happened next door, the whole tops of the trees were cut off. And what was hat racking, what wasn't? It was very ambiguous then. And we also had a complaint once down at Bay Tree Lodge from same person, about hat racking the mango trees. Well, I'll be honest with you, they insisted that that's a proper pruning, and one of the other municipalities, we looked at it, clearly said lychee trees, mango trees, and there's some other tree that we did include in here, do need to be hat racked. That is a proper pruning method for that tree. And we have a lot of those trees here. So it wasn't to make it more onerous. In some ways, it was to make it more liberal, to make it clear that we got an ordinance that says you can't hat rack, but yet it's appropriate. And there were arborists there saying, this is an appropriate pruning, and it really became a bit of a to-do. So it was kind of one of those that if you're going to tweak it, we looked at the things that we've had to-dos over to try and clarify those things so that it doesn't happen in the future. Really make it clear for everyone.
That's good historical background.
Yep.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yeah, I just had, the item on page 14 out of 16, it looks new because it's in red. The no signs or other attachments to trees.
Yes.
I mean, we already have sign things, rules, right? Or maybe you can put signs in trees, I don't know, but where did this come from?
It's the fact that we do have some residents that like driving nails into trees, which is known as tree abuse.
I mean, are they overdoing it?
Well, I mean, I don't know where you split the hair at. Is it 1? Is it 5?
I feel like we don't need that just off the cuff, but that's just that feels like a bit of a,
God bless you.
Commissioner Fender?
I can't even remember what I was going to say.
Something about bird feeders?
Well,
No,
I'm wondering if we can, we've had a lot of discussion here. Do we want to?
Actually, I do remember what I was going to say. Sorry.
Go ahead.
So you brought up a couple times that. Yeah, you brought up the concept of the heritage tree process, and that exists. It's already on the website. I showed you the website, so you can just go to the sewallspoint.org website and search for a heritage tree program, and it's a pretty mature process. And you should indeed nominate your tree to be recognized.
is there still a committee, active committee?
There's a garden club.
But I don't think they're there.
Doesn't matter. I mean, should you put in your submission, we would find a way to resurrect the committee and get someone to approve it.
Well, I mean, I wasn't saying about doing this just for my personal tree.
No, I'm saying it's a good program, and we have it on our website. It's a great
Yeah.
thing. That's one aspect of education of protecting the trees. And why
I
we
just
care
think
about
people don't, I guess I'm looking for promotion and communication, because I think, as she said, the actual committee has been disbanded, so nobody's actively,
It's our job to reband the committee. I mean, I think that's a odd approach. I mean, we have a great program, and we have some
What's
great
the odd
education to diminish the concept because some residents moved away or the committee is old and disbanded. I mean,
We can reformulate it.
that we can reformulate the committee. It's,
right,
yeah.
right, that's what I'm saying.
Mr. Daniels, I'm sorry, I wasn't ignoring you on purpose.
That's okay. I just wanted to go back to the mitigation, and the question came up, and Commissioner Campo brought it up, and I have had communications with Mariah Pierce, our finance director. At our next meeting, we do have roughly, I think, $70,000, $80,000 that are in the fund. We have a whole breakdown for you, but what we don't have is an allocation of an account so we can track that. She's spent 4 or 5 weeks at least going back historically and looking at where the fines came in and where they were at. And so what I'm doing is a resolution to come forward at the next meeting to actually adopt an account that we can put in our finance system, so the money's going to be there. Now, it'll be tracked on the financials, you can see it. And I agree, we need to, one of the programs that I was looking for money for was for a tree giveaway program, where we can do education and giving away the trees. And I think the chief actually had that idea on doing the tree giveaway. And I think that's another positive thing that we can do, stepping forward and endorsing what we want to do as a community and what our atmosphere is here. So I promise you will have that resolution. You will have all the numbers at our next meeting.
Commissioner Campo?
I know we're making progress on the ordinance side. We're going to have 2 weeks. We're going to look at that. We're going to get that out there. But I would like to maybe suggest that we could formulate or work on formulating a tree committee. And I know some people have been affected by what's gone on and maybe want to, exert that energy into something productive. And if we could reestablish a committee that would help promote the Tree City with education, with recognition of heritage trees, and with helping staff identify where we might spend that $70,000 or $80,000 So I don't know how we might go about doing that. It would be a non-binding committee, and, they'd be subject to sunshine, I don't know, but I think there's enough agreement here that we want to make some commitments that would be felt, and we could also, connect with so many people that have got a heart and have seen, and I know that your heart was affected by what happened next door to you, and, a lot of people have grief and they want to, express it and to somehow make it productive. So is there any support for forming or, reformulating the committee that we've had in the past?
I know a few people who would happily
So
volunteer.
is there there a heritage tree recognition committee, or should we just start from scratch with this new animal here?
No, I think keeping it as a heritage tree recognition, and then we can branch out from there. So I think we need to bite off what we.
Branch out, very good.
And, so, we can just kind of work within the group and then, work on the other things that we need to do. But I think also, the educational piece, and also what you brought up about the median, that's the showcase of our city when you drive in. And I know we have to work with DOT on some of that, but, it's nothing that's insurmountable.
Well, don't let us out on a limb, or else we'll leave.
You might trip me, though.
Well, let me ask the obvious question. If the commission thinks that we'd like to put together a tree committee to handle heritage trees or any other tree issues, should we do that prior to revising the ordinance?
Parallel.
Parallel? Because it'd take a little more than a couple of weeks to formulate that committee.
Well, I think the town commission makes ordinances, so we work on the ordinance, and then
We'll work on the tree committee. We can put an ad out on our website and get, do a constant contact, get the word out. So anybody that's interested can fill out a volunteer form, and, we'll go from there.
okay.
Okay. Commissioner Mayfield?
Yeah, I think maybe a good job for the committee would be to try to find new residents, because I did ask April when do you hand out the wonderful, wonderful new resident information? And she said when they come into town hall. I didn't go into town hall when I moved here. So I think that's not necessarily the best criteria. And I don't know, they could go through the property appraisal. I don't know the best way to, and maybe work with relationships with the realtors, because I agree, the
I
realtor's
believe
the
the
first.
realtors also have these booklets, from my understanding. No? Okay,
Yeah, a lot of realtors bring their clients in to introduce them.
okay.
But maybe incentives for them, or some incentives for realtors, whatever. Anyways, just something that's the committee could, so we could find the new residents and get to them before they start doing things.
Commissioner Fender?
So you can certainly do all those things, but I also know that there happens to be a person who advertises in the Stroll magazine who brings a whole basket of stuff that you, as a business owner, can donate into her basket, and she brings it to new residents as well. So
Yeah, I'm talking about just finding out how,
You should
as
put
soon
that
as they
booklet
own
in
it,
the
like,
basket.
what's the quickest way? Not just like they moved
they're
in
definitely
2
gonna
months
come to
ago.
Town hall, right? Now, they'll definitely stop in.
I've never stopped at town hall.
You've never been to town hall?
No, I did not
Bet
go to
your
town hall when
husband
I moved here.
I have seen you in town hall.
Yes, yes.
Anyway, so my really light is on to tie this up in a bow and to say, all this is awesome discussion, and I think makes progress, and I think we're headed in the right direction. My real offer to here is the discussion we have not had on what does mitigation mean? Because the mitigation should be part of the permitting process before the building gets done, and if someone needs to mitigate for some impact they're gonna have, what will be our requirement for that mitigation? And is it, if you knock a tree down here, you gotta put another tree up here? I don't know what it is, and I'm actually open to, you said 2 for 1, I don't, I've seen, there's all kinds of
Yeah,
choices.
Jack,
I don't
I'm
care
still
about the
under the
money.
impression that in order to get a permit, that they need to
It
submit
does
to
not
you
exist.
a mitigation plan of, if they're going to knock down trees, that part of your permitting process.
Now that it's been refined to be better, yes.
No, I mean,
just because of-
20,
Oh, yeah.
22 years ago, North Sewalls Point, that's what we had to do.
Find the
So,
ordinance. Where,
no,
why did you have to?
so
do
my question is, when someone wants to clear a lot and knock down trees and get a building permit, do you require them to show you the trees that they're knocking down and how they're going to replant a similar caliper number of inches to replace it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so,
Well, it didn't happen in Oakwood. I mean, I grant you that, but.
So, I mean, it took us an hour to get that. Took us an hour to get that.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
Well, I think that was, that was the thing that, one of the main things we were.
Do you want to
doing.
respond to that? Because, I mean, we've been having this
We
thing
would
linger
have-
on.
Well, I think I can. I think I said it, but let me say it again. Oakwood, after Oakwood, administratively, I issued a directive that this is what we're going to follow, and that's what Jack's been following. He's in agreement with me. He's the chief building official, so technically he has some independence there, but he totally agrees with me, and that's what we're doing. And I'm more than happy to, we can bring in examples or email you all examples of mitigation plans, and so you have an idea what we're talking about.
You guys are awesome. May I? I'm sorry.
And I think the, the main thing we were doing here was to putting that into the ordinance. That's- Okay?
Correct.
To me, when I read this whole thing, and there were a lot of different things, I thought that was the main thing. We were going to formalize that they needed to have the mitigation plan submitted with the permit. And it wasn't going to be administrative, it was going to be by ordinance. That's
And
the key thing.
I was just going to say that you guys are awesome. I'm glad you're doing that now post Oakwood, but, we're all going to get old. You're not going to be here forever. We're putting the ordinances in place for the future town managers and building officials, should there ever be one. We hope you'll stay forever, but we would like to codify the fact that we don't actually require anybody to have a mitigation plan. That's
Right,
all.
so basically, the answer is, that's been done administratively,
Yes.
but it's not been in the ordinance.
Right.
And now, that's what Frank
And it
wants
will
to do.
be.
You paid way too much money
Yes. I pay you way too much money?
back when you did it. No, I'm glad you did. Nicely done.
It's, I mean, I love that house still.
Okay, to summarize, can we summarize this a little bit, just to make sure I know where we're heading here? Mr. Daniels, you're going to try to give us a revised write-up of the ordinance?
Yes, and
Both Write-up of the ordinance?
of the strike-through language and the proposed language, and have that for you, hopefully for the next meeting. So, and it will include the items that we talked about with the Heritage Committee, and also making sure that it's quite clear in the mitigation plan.
Very good. Any other, I'm afraid to ask this question, any other comments on the subject? I've got nothing, okay. Well, I guess if nobody has an objection, let's circle around to the Florida City Gas presentation by Jordana Witter. Welcome.
How's everybody doing? Good? Good. All right, so we've been in the talks of getting natural gas over into your city, and there are a couple ways that we can do that. Our engineering team at this time is looking at two routes. We have a project going on right now for an area extension program for Rio, which is just north of here, and we're considering that being a route coming over from Rio and coming down. The other route would be through Jensen Beach, where we could avoid a few waterways and a few permits getting there from that route. But the biggest thing right now is seeing how interested the city is in getting natural gas. I think that probably about a little over 1,000 residential homes here in the city. And what I did, I had engineering pretty much map out the entire city limit and see how much it would cost, or they're in the process of seeing how much it would cost to run gas lines on every single road in the city. Just so we can give you guys, an estimate of what that would cost. And we're doing that based on 25% interest. Now, before I bring a solid number to the table, I was thinking that it would be best for me to send out surveys to all the residents to see who has propane, who would consider switching to propane, who would consider switching from electric to natural gas. So that's what I want to start with is, sending out a survey to all the residents, seeing how much interest we can gather. And then from there, we can have a more accurate number. There are also several ways for this to be paid for. The main one, or the more popular one, would be through our AEP program, which is what Rio is also doing. It would take 10 years for that to be paid for, and each customer would pay a percentage of that, or a small amount of that, to recover the cost. But that is something that I guess should be discussed off the air maybe, to see how we can work around that. Any questions on getting natural gas to the city?
I've asked a lot of people, and I'd say the majority of the people I've spoken with to date there's a lot of interest in having natural gas for a few reasons. One, there's still people with generators. These propane tanks, if it prolongs, they go empty,
Right,
and you're not able to get propane. If you have a major hurricane, you want to have power.
absolutely.
Which includes some cases having air conditioning, which is a necessity for some of the homeowners because of health issues. Also keeping your refrigerator going, and having light. So those are necessities for many people to have. The other, it would be, a lot of people wouldn't mind having a natural gas hookup to their stoves. But I think a major part would be in case of emergency, especially with the hurricanes. We've seen what happened on the West Coast
Oh, yeah.
where they lost power. And I feel a lot more people, it gives you a safety feeling to have that. Propane tanks in general, to store a big propane tank is a lot more dangerous than having natural gas. I didn't even know that.
Right.
A former firefighter lives on my road, told me he'd love to have natural gas. He doesn't feel safe with a propane tank. He doesn't
Wow.
want on his property. So there's tremendous interest, I feel, throughout the community. I've talked to a lot of people about it,
So definitely, you would say more than the 25 that I'm projecting, 25%?
a lot more.
Okay, good. So I'm still going to send those surveys out so we can have a more solid number to work with. I think that's the right way to do it, instead of kind of guesstimating. So, if it's okay with everyone, I would be more than happy to get some mailers out in the upcoming weeks.
Some of the people are seasonal, so if you send the mail, they might not see it.
Well, hopefully they have a forwarding address or something of the sort.
I couldn't answer that. I assume they might.
I think it's a great idea.
I have a question.
Oh, you look excited.
I want to
Yes.
give you some feedback.
Is it on FPL's bill? Am I making this up? Are you guys, are you totally separate utility than FPNL, or is it?
So we are owned completely by FPL, but we are separate.
Okay.
Yes.
And I, for one, would welcome natural gas, but of course, the issue is always how much it costs.
Yes.
Right.
You may have a lot of,
is? People ask that question?
well, they do. When you tell me everybody wants it,
Yeah.
they don't know the answer to that question yet. And that's the key issue.
Right.
You know, in a lot of cases, in the old days, city gas or my old utility would have just run the line and it wouldn't have cost the customers anything. Because they've always felt, and rightfully so, that natural gas is kind of an optional thing. It's not like you have to have natural gas. You have to have electricity, you have to have water, but you don't have to have natural gas. So I'll be interested to see how much they're thinking that's going to cost.
Absolutely. Now, just a side note, an additional benefit for, whoever decides to tie into the line, we do have rebates for appliances, specifically water heaters, stovetops, as well as dryers. So that is an additional benefit that customers are usually pretty excited about. So that's something that I'll also send out as part of the mailers.
You know, I'm also kind of curious, I think we've all been watching the TV, how some of the states are starting to ban natural gas stoves and stuff, and I've been kind of disappointed that the gas companies and the gas industry in general hasn't come back with a little bit sharper response. You know, the fact that, saying that a natural gas stove is impairing your cognitive abilities is absolute nonsense, and there's not one shred of scientific evidence to support that, but it seems to go unchallenged. And places like California and New York, are starting to ban natural gas appliances, which I just think is ridiculous.
I absolutely agree with you.
So I don't know how that filters into your overall business plan, but I really think the gas companies need to do a better job of putting out the facts. You know, what they don't talk about is, if you use natural gas in your home, or you're really getting the full efficiency of natural gas. In other words, you're getting 90 or 95% efficiency because you're burning it right there, as opposed to if you use electricity and natural gas is generated by electricity, you're only getting about 50% because that's the efficiency of a natural gas plant. That seems to disappear from the from the discussions, I guess the idea here is that eventually there won't be any natural gas running generating plants, so it would only be solar, and of course, we know solar is free, or at least people think it is. Anyway, I would love to see natural gas here, and we'll be interested to see what you come up with in the future.
Absolutely, and I would also be more than happy to share some additional information regarding, all of the talk about natural gas being harmful. I'd be more than happy to share some information. I'll send it over to Mr. Daniels, and he can share with the board. There isn't any solid proof as to it being harmful. Of course, in an area that is more dense, more populated, then, things are the numbers are gonna be off. But I'll definitely send something formal over so you can share it with residents or whoever has questions regarding it.
Thank you. Mr. Daniels, do you have anything you wanted to add to this?
No, I appreciate you being here and the support that we've gotten from your organization. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. All right, thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
All right.
Getting goosebumps there, John.
About what?
That's the most passion I've heard.
Well, I just,
You're a utility guy.
well, but you're getting really one side of the story on TV these days, and it really bothers me because it's not accurate. It really is not accurate. Natural gas burns very, very cleanly. We're not talking about coal or oil here. We're talking about natural gas.
You sound like someone who used to work at a nuclear power plant, too.
Yeah, that would work.
That's what I grew up with.
That would work as well. Okay, that brings us down to commission and staff closing comments. Mr. Daniels?
Yes, if I can direct you to the screen, and what you see is our webpage, and we call these widgets down on the bottom of the page. And if you notice, we have a widget that's called Roadway Improvements -S2S, Septic to Sewer.
Cool.
So we are directing our residents to click on that, and I think I just hit the wrong one, sorry.
That's not it.
Yeah. Don't do this at home. Okay, and if you notice, and this is a project that April has been working on, because we're still trying to format the map part that we want to do. But at least to get this out on the front, the first one is Phase 1, and this was the maps that we had from Phase 1. Obviously, our plan then is to build what Phase 1 was, doing the whole explanation, doing the finance numbers and where we got the grants from, because it's all pretty much in the past. And then there's just another part, because we did two parts of Phase 1, and then we have Phase 3. So, we can direct, and this is all the plans for Phase 3 that we currently have, an outline of where the project is and the streets, and then it actually goes into how the road is built and so forth. So for anybody that wants to look at this in their living room or their kitchen, they can pull up the plans and take a look at it and even see where their house is and how it affects. And then the last one is our septic to store study, because we only have so many widgets, so we put that here, and then as we progress with the septic to store plans, that'll be expanded upon too. So it's not exactly where we want to be, but I think it's a great medium for right now, and I applaud April for her fine work.
Great job, April.
I have, Chief, did you want to bring up about the egg extravaganza?
Sure. This is the egg hunt is a week from Friday. It begins at 9 a.m. sharp, so don't be late. And hopefully at least some of you will be there. We're always in need of some judges for the fancy fedora and beautiful bonnet contest. We have fantastic prizes, all sorts of stuffed critters, because the egg hunt isn't just for bunnies anymore. So you can, and adults can compete as well, so feel free. It's not too late to head over to Dollar Tree and get some accessories to make your bonnets and fedoras. So I hope to see you there.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. And just on a last note, another project that we've been working on to help communications between the commission, because you all can't talk to each other, but kind of what I've done in other jurisdictions, kind of have, rules that you want to govern yourself by on, how you do certain things. And I know this might all be Greek, but I will have an example that I can show you and get to you, and then at a meeting, we can discuss what you liked about it, what you didn't like, where I'm missing the point on something, or what have you. But I think it's going to really help on, our communications and the communications out to the public and to other elected officials.
Great.
And I'm done.
Okay, any comments from the commission? Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes, I have a comment. I'm on the Treasure Coast Regional League of Cities. I'm their secretary, but just been motivated by them. There's a lot going on with the state legislature. We are going to have a meeting locally, a home rule meeting, just discussing the bills, how they affect local municipalities. And it's going to be Sewalls Point and Stewart and Indiantown and Ocean Breeze. And this will be at the Stewart Rec Center on April 19th at 5:30, in case you guys are interested. Like 5:30 to, not that long, maybe an hour. I think Tom Campenny's going to moderate and just kind of touching on the important topics that are being discussed at that level.
What's that date again, Kaya?
April 19th at 5:30. Come on, man. It's kind of near Hudson. Yeah, it's not called that, actually. You're correct. It's like the Flagler. Flagler Center, yeah. Sorry.
Had you said that, I would know where you meant.
Going way back.
I'm lost, so.
I knew when you said Stewart Rec Center.
Yeah. April 19th at 5:30 PM. It shouldn't be that long. I'm no expert on any of these subjects, and each commissioner is just going to pick a topic that's kind of pertinent to their town more so than others, and town managers offered to help, and so. Nothing controversial. This is just kind of education and how it affects us. Well, home rule's a thing.
Okay, oh, yeah.
Nothing controversial.
Any other commission comments? I wanted to just briefly thank Mr. Daniels for his presentation to the county commission the other day. I think he did a lot of fast tap dancing, and that's kind of what we're looking for in a town manager, the ability to adjust to an uncomfortable situation, which I think it really went that way. But I think he did a great job of keeping us on point and making the point that what we're doing here is an important project for not only for the town of Sewalls Point, but for the quality of the estuary and everything else. So thanks for doing that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, or I'll take a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you.